Hello, I am actually answering somebody, and it is because I got an email this morning that said, it seems like you're still hurt, and why don't you just get on with it and teach your style of human design? And a couple things. One is that's a hyphenated word, so you are still. It is actually two words. You need an apostrophe between the you and the are. You are still hurt. And the second thing is, it is since so long that I have to be worried that people would perceive, oh, you're angry at Raw, you're hurt, or why don't you get over it? The guy is dead. And so his family, however, is not. And that copyright claim is something that should bother you as much as it bothers me. And Raw's interpretation, oh my God, that is a crime against humanity. Are you joking? It is an indoctrination program, and it doesn't aim for the good. You can do human design according to Ra. One woman, a sannyasin, wrote in an article, now I know I'm selfish. Now, you've got to understand that Ra's interpretation that would lead to this conclusion is a crime. He took something that was a great, most up-to-date tool around and turned it into a very weird justification program. I am not hurt so much as deeply offended, and I am offended by the copyright claim, and I'm offended by that claim that his is the only human design you can use. Give me a break. His is the worst possible outcome. And you write that it seems like I'm still hurt and he's dead, and why don't I get over it? Look, he might be dead, but that family has claimed that this is the only human design that is allowed, and that is a big problem for me. And as you can hear in my voice, I still suffer autoimmune disorders, nerve problems, and I've been on a mission to heal. But it all started with that story with Ra and this slamming me heavy to the point that it affected and burned out my nervous system so much I went blind in my left eye, and they call it optic neuritis. And so I went to the ophthalmologist. He said one thing that it could be is a tumor in your brain, or it could be MS, or it could be no known cause. And I was happy with no known cause, but over the time, I have not recovered, which I thought I would. It should be no problem. Ra was not omnipotent in that way. He couldn't just slam me. And now I think, maybe I should really consider that I got cursed. And I mean, I shouldn't completely discount that he affected my health and well-being. it is without a doubt that Ra wanted me to be abolished. He wanted me dead. He wanted my study with him that subsequently would change to Zen human design and the instruction to observe how the mechanism works in yourself. He didn't want me to be out there. He and his family and the whole Jovian archive program is intended to turn people into automatons, robots. I'm gonna sneeze. He wanted to turn everyone into, among the faithful, believing what he said. And his viewpoint was not one of enlightenment or what the path of virtue might be. He wanted to get you off the hook. You don't have to grow. You don't have to learn. You can just follow what I say. Here is your strategy. Here is your authority. Believe me. I, after all, am the person who received the system, and therefore my interpretation must be coming also from on high. Now, I would just say to you, I don't think so. If you know enough human design, you look at any place where he starts, it always leads you to a dead end. You got two options. Okay, one, that, two, that's even worse. Okay, I don't actually get it. And therefore, you don't know human design. And it is my opinion that I did find my way. I have a few students, but let me just advise you that Ra's family has continued. This slander against me and this opposition that you're not allowed to teach human design, all of these false claims made by that family are affecting my business. And that means I don't really have a business. Every once in a while, somebody emails or invites me to a reading or talking about something. But, without a doubt, besides the fact that I can't talk easily and I don't have much resilience, I am very, very, very offended that Ra's family just absolutely was willing to smash me down and obliterate me if they could. And I think that they might succeed. In other words, you who wrote, this whole story of human design according to Ra, and really just share with me that without a doubt, you don't want people to do this kind of human design. You don't want that they lock in Ra's interpretation as the only one. Here's how come I'm offended. I am so deeply worried about humanity. That means, my friend said, well, you can't save the world, but I am absolutely galvanized to do what I can while I am still on the planet to reverse this course, starting with that copyright claim. I went on to some site about international copyright, and this one lawyer said, well, this copyright notice of theirs is largely meaningless. And I wasn't totally sure what he was talking about, but then I searched a little further, and just to say, there are only 2 copyright conventions that are recognized. One is the Berne, that is Switzerland, the Berne Convention, and the other is the Uniform Code. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's here in the U.S. as far as I got it, 1955. But anyway, there is no such thing as an international copyright. And so that claim by Jovian is one that you can say it is written by somebody who wants to scare you that Ra was the only person who received this system, therefore it belongs to him, and he has subsequently identified his family as owning his work. And I would just say this much. It is a pity for those children to have to uphold Ra's made-up fraud that, yeah, he did a few things that were sort of okay, but in large part, he made up stuff, and he was, not enlightened at all, and therefore coming up with his suggestions of how you should be oriented in your life according to your design. And you know what I do, just to get to that other thing, I don't at all tell you, oh, you're this, you should do that. No way. I am especially good at composites. At the point that there was this fracture with Ra, I mean, I knew what we had developed with him didn't work. I listened to everybody's readings, and they didn't know what they were talking about any more than I did. And Ra, in contrast, was still quite solid and good, and he could look at a chart and come up with some meaningful statements. All right, but at that point, right at that fracture, I had the goal that I had to prove that human design could be used for the good. Since I had lived with Ra, and I mean, he stayed with us for 5 years, and 1 to 3 months a year, he was around us a lot, and he was very influential with the marriage, in that he would recommend to Chaitanya that because I'm emotionally defined, that Chaitanya was allowed to just leave the room and say he can't handle the conditioning. Now, that would have been all right if he had just left the room. I was in a bad mood, but he didn't. He came in and then would dump a load of crap and then leave. And I was so offended, and I was so bummed out. It was so heavy. And I yelled and yelled and yelled. I had one friend who said, well, I came to the house, I heard you guys yelling, and I turned around and left. In other words, I was very, very unhappy that this influence on my relationship would ruin that marriage to the point we got a divorce a few years later. But why I'm bringing this up is something about how to use human design to improve your relationships, to understand your design and who you are and how you affect other people, etc. So I had to start over again by eliminating all of Ra's phrases and keywords and circuits and all that crap. I mean, when we met Ra, he had told us that we were so lucky because he already wrote the book and all we had to do was turn to the book and read the page and then introduce somebody. We would be rich and famous. It would be the best. And, you know, it started, that whole copyright thing started right there because we had a client, a student, who read the book. She opened it up and the customer then wrote us and said, well, we could have done better by ourselves. That was awful. And that, therefore, started the whole thing about having to be licensed. But Ra told us at that point, the beginning, that he didn't have a book. He would just use the centers. And he had 5 years that he just used the centers and the doing and waiting, and that was so potent that a fellow, a Beeson who lived there, gave Ra 25 grand to write his book. And so the only way I could get around it was to drop everything from Ra. And I just kept digging and digging and digging and uncovering. And let's say about 10 years in, I had gotten rid of enough that I could make sense of how to work with human design in a way that was healthy. And so the thing that I am particularly good is that I can see the path that gets written for a person in the chart. I could see it very easily, how, you know, you look at the electromagnetics in composite charts and you know what the two people get to deal with, what lessons they signed up for. And Ra did something very different in that he said, look, I am the greatest human being who has ever lived, and therefore you should believe me, you should follow me, you should take my word for it. And really, you look at everything he did, it takes you, you know, I don't know how long, but it was very evident to me that I couldn't look at a chart and make sense. The only way I was able to do it was by starting over again. In other words, anything that was added to the mechanics, I took off. Anything that was mechanic, that's what was my study. And so, you know, I am not hurt by Ra any longer. I was. He really slandered me. He told everyone that I was not generous to his kids and I was stealing his royalties. let me just say that I borrowed money in Ra's behalf, and therefore I paid back that loan with Ra's royalties. And so, of course, he didn't see them because they were sent to somebody else to pay back a loan. So I was very, very disturbed by his slander and his half-truths and his condemnation and his copyright theft and the ruination of my business. I was very hurt. But, life goes on, and I am not so hurt as much as deeply offended and worried about humanity. God, this is the worst crime, that you take a tool like human design and you turn it into the church of Ra-Uru-Hu and his fantasy. Oh my God. Anyway, you could say angry, but I am not hurt by it. I am worried, and I'm worried about you, the listener. You ought to be worried too. And so I don't know if you use Ra's interpretation, but if you do, be careful. Anything that you don't agree with, you should just stop and ask yourself, is this true? And if you feel uncomfortable when telling somebody, oh, you have a design to wait, and you feel bad about it, you should stop and check out what happened to you. Because right there in that judgment, you can see Ra's hierarchy and his preference, that this is better than that, and oh gee, and then, oh my God, his Ravi Ching. Your planet's fixing the lines. Oh my God, this guy made stuff up. And so I am only worried for humanity by what Ra did. It is quite a crime in my view.